The Rainham Church, second milestone on the road of Christianity to England. When I last visited United Kingdom, I was surprised to know I was living on the oldest road of England that was built by Romans who invaded England in 43 AD. My journalist neighbor, Alan Watkins, personally showed me all that.
To Rainham. This is one of the most special villages anywhere in Kent. It's on the main road to London, the A2, but if you look at it very carefully you'll see that it's a Roman road. It's been here 2,000 years at least, and it takes the traffic from the continent to the capital of England. Still very busy. It's not as it was at one time because the motorway system has now been built running parallel with the A2. But it still carries lots and lots of traffic. 40 miles down the road behind the camera is the port of Dover. And this was the area where the Romans invaded Britain in 42 AD. They took over the running of the country by a mixture of sword and pacification, and they built great buildings here. One of the sites which we know existed somewhere in this vicinity was a palace of the Archbishop of Canterbury, who lived in Canterbury for much of the time, but used to come here and run business and live here. The church behind us dates from about 1,000 years ago. It's dedicated to the Saint Margaret of Antioch, who Romans may have named after Marina, the goddess of water. A pagan goddess being adopted by the Christians was not unknown. This was the area where Christianity came into its own in England. Canterbury has had a Christian church at least since 600 AD. The probability is that Rainham and Canterbury and nearby Rochester, where there is another cathedral like Canterbury, Rochester administers the west of Kent. Canterbury has two roles. One is the operation of the churches in Canterbury. Canterbury is important because it was the home of the Archbishop of Canterbury, and it was here, and still is even today, where all the rules that govern the Anglican Church are formulated. The Anglican Church is a breakaway from the Roman Catholic Church, and it was the Romans that probably, almost certainly, brought into this country the Christian faith. They had very strong religious beliefs. They worshipped a number of gods, one of which was the one that Christians today worship. The one true God, as Christians believe. Building here is not the first. There was probably one here from about 650 AD. This one dates from the end of the 1000s. So it's about 1,000 years old, maybe a little bit older. It's dedicated to the memory of Saint Margaret of Antioch, who was a Christian saint killed in about 300 AD, but nowadays her very existence is questioned, particularly as one of her feats that earned her sainthood was that she was swallowed by a dragon, but because she was carrying a cross, he regurgitated her, and she survived and he didn't. So if you believe it, you believe it. If you don't, you take it with a pinch of salt.
With the graveyard attached to the church, there are some as old as 400-year-old graves.
Just came 1760. This was when the person who lies here died and was buried. This is one of the older gravestones, but there are lots of them around. There's another one there. And eventually all of these will presumably end up the same way.
The Gillingham bus disaster of December 4, 1951 killed 24 cadets and injured 18. At that time, it was the highest loss of life in any road accident in British history. Alan kindly shows us the grave of
James Trigg, one of 24 boys who were members of the Royal Marine Cadets here in Medway, who in 1951 were marching to a boxing match at the dockyard, the Royal Navy dockyard, when they were struck from behind by a double-decker bus. Right?
What was given to the driver?
None.
Okay.
He was not to blame. It was a freak accident. The driver never got behind the wheel of a bus again. His workmates all protected him and supported him until he died a few years ago. He felt so guilty about it. The whole community got behind him.
V sign is an offensive gesture of English archers for the French.
This is a yew tree, and most old churchyards have got a yew tree. It's because in the 13 and 1400s the yew was used to create arrows for archery practice, which took place at the back of the churchyard. It was a requirement that all men in every town should be able to shoot accurately a bow and an arrow. The English longbow was responsible for the defeat of the French at various battles in the 100 Years' War that took place in the 1300s, and it was because of the practice here. And there's a very rude sign in this country which is holding two fingers up. It's meaning behind it, but the origins go back to the days of the 100 Years' War, when if an archer was caught by the French, they would chop off the two fingers that were used for pulling the bow.
Inside the church. I regret I didn't carry the camera flash, and thus today missing commentary by Mr. Allen on the historical artifacts inside the church. But I do remember having seen the big wooden chest lying there since 14th century. Senior lady sitting there. I sought the permission for a camera click. They exclaimed, "But your camera might crack clicking the extreme beauties." Then there was a loud laughter everywhere. I then explained that we too in Punjabi have a song, "Sheeshe ਚ ਤਰੇੜ ਪੈ ਗਈ ਵਾਲ ਵੋਂਦੀ ਨੇ ਧਿਆਨ ਜਦੋਂ ਮਾਰਿਆ." Hearing it, a smartly dressed beauty, the church sister joins us. "Yes, you can click me." Ellen introduced me to her. The sister exclaimed, "Oh yes, he is an Indian. They believe in the rebirth after death." And then she laughed. I had heard the Christian preachers are best salesmen, and today I have it. Chime of the church bells. I asked Mr. Allen where the sound came from. He took me to the church tower. It houses a peal of 8 bells. The tower, built in 1480 AD, is 100 feet high. It probably housed beacon at the top. Rainham is on the coast.
Yes. Oh no.
Film what you're saying.
Yeah, that's just when on the continent when they ring the bells, they just chime, they just swing backwards and forwards like that. Now, in English,
Romans were the pioneers to build straight roads.
The A2. The main road from Dover to London, built by the Romans. And if you look over my shoulder, it's as straight as a die, and the same towards Dover in the opposite direction, absolutely straight. The Romans used to work it out using 3 sticks, 1, 2, 3, and they'd line them up and they'd build to that stick, and then they'd move on and they'd put 3 more sticks and so on, and they'd keep that going for mile after mile after mile. And if you look at a map of England, all over England there are Roman roads that stand out, even those that have now been buried under fields. They're still there and you can still see them because the ground has got trees and has got a thinness there which is not so elsewhere. Tell me when.
Yes.
In the distance, from the A2, you can see the estuary of the Medway and the River Thames. That is where there are proposals for a new international airport to be built to replace Heathrow Airport in London.
Oh.
It would be the biggest airport probably in the world, certainly in Europe.